There's a danger to this prelude that it's going to be the worst of Bach, just a constant stream of notes without any structure, any purpose to it. We've seen this in the G-sharp prelude as well, the G-sharp minor one. You just look at the page and it's just notes, just non-stop notes in constant motion. But I think it's more pronounced in this F-sharp prelude for a number of reasons. First of all, I mean, it's just as quick as the G-sharp one, but the harmony changes very quickly, and it's also implied, like this would be one chord, this is another, this is a third, and then to the fourth. And when the harmony is implied, we get a little less tied into the harmonic motion of the piece. But most importantly, there are different shapes in both hands. There's basically two voices in this piece, each hand has a voice. And there's different shapes that are very rarely, almost never in sync. So while the right hand might be doing that motion, this the left hand might be doing do 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 do. So because you have this fast motion, these constant 16th notes that are in different shapes at odds with each other, and a not very clear harmony that changes very fast, there's this tendency to feel like it's just a constant flurry of notes. Now I said the worst of Bach, but it's really the worst of interpreting Bach. I think you can interpret these flurry of notes in ways that is incredible. For example, I first noticed this in the bourrée from the E major French suite. Let's see if I remember it. It's like boom. And even though that's also just a constant stream of notes, you notice that there's little patterns, there's little things that give it, I mean, you can dance to it. It just, every time I play that piece where I hear it, it just really makes me move my body in a groove. And I think it's because there are like patterns, these rhythmic shapes, as I like to call them, that repeat, and that's really what gives rise to the dance. So over here, for example, the theme of the prelude, right at the beginning, that's a stream of notes, just a constant flurry of notes, but there's a shape to it. There's this bum, or the left hand. This grouping together of notes into these patterns that usually repeat, I think that's what gives rise to a groove, to a pulse that we've talked about so many times in Bach. Focusing in on that groove is what's going to make this piece beautiful, danceable, have some purpose beyond just a bunch of notes. So let's talk about how to achieve that, how to make this more than a stream of notes without any purpose or structure. I kind of already gave everything away. The whole point, the idea is to notice these patterns and dig into the pulse, the rhythm, the dance of it. There's not too many. There's the one that I just mentioned here at the beginning. And there's a second one, a kind of counter pulse that often goes hand in hand with this one, which goes do 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 do. The rest are pretty much variations of it. There's over here, there's one that's very similar, like and there's one where it's a little broken up, like do 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 do, or do 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 do. You can see that the beginning of that is this bum bum is the same as do 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 do, but it's just that it's broken up. So there's not too many of these rhythmic shapes that give rise to the dance, but each one is very important, and you really just need to be able to feel and love and dance each one of them. I don't know why, but for me it's very easy. Just the opening, this bum, just a groove enters my body listening to that. The trick is sustaining it, playing different grooves in both hands. That's where it's a little more difficult. So let's talk about that a bit more. I should point out one important thing is the articulation can help a lot. If you're playing everything, for example, strictly legato, pop 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 pop, do 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 do, especially at the same volume, then it tends more towards the constant stream of notes sort of feel instead of a groove, a dance. With articulation, however, you can combine staccato, portato, legato. I also did some dynamics over there as well, but I think the articulation is more important than the dynamics. So play around with it. There's really no clear way of doing it. Just if you feel like you're getting either a bit bored or sounding a little too one note, try changing your articulation. If you're not even sure where to start, try playing the whole piece or just one hand, strictly legato, strictly staccato, and then start mixing and matching. Now, one thing that helps is to compare the hands. The left hand is really quite difficult in this piece. So something might sound good in the right hand, but in the left not. That just happens for me a lot. So for example, this shape, this sounds very good. But when I try to do it here in the left hand, something's a bit off. That one came out okay. I practiced this a lot recently. This helped me a lot. If something wasn't sounding good, usually in the left hand, I would pay attention to the way that I did that shape in the right hand and try to match. So for example, in this case, I noticed that I was giving too much emphasis on this final note, probably because it was played by the thumb. But looking at it the right hand, I realized that the groove actually gets softer at the end of the shape. Bum, 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 bum. Not bum, 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 bum. That was the second way, was the way that was happening with the left hand because of the thumb. And then once I started realizing that and I focused on emphasizing the beginning of the shape, boop, 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 boom, it kind of fell into place. The takeaway from all of this, once you work on some articulation, you can play each shape, both the left hand and the right hand. Play the whole piece, beginning to end, with just one of the voices, just one of the hands, and just be sure that you can dance to the entire thing. Play them separately multiple times, and only then can you start bringing them together. So let's talk about bringing them together. There's not a huge secret here. It's very similar to what we talked about in the B-flat minor prelude, the previous episode. Where there was a bunch of voices. There were 3 voices. Here there's only 2 voices, but you still need to concentrate so much. Even while you're playing this shape with the right hand, you need to be aware of this shape with the left hand, and vice versa. You can never lose your concentration, because once you do, you end up playing statically just notes. But if you're paying attention to both voices separately, you can really hear them in your head as you're playing them. Bum, 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 versus do 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 dum. The more concentrated you are, the more life and shape you can give to each one of these rhythms, and the more it comes alive. So that's by far the number one tip, is massive, massive amount of concentration. The other one is, if you're ever feeling like things are not sounding very good together, it's probably the concentration. But if it's not, one thing that I noticed is, especially because the shapes are very different, sometimes, usually when the left hand has some funky fingering, they're not in lockstep. You got to be very, very careful that everything is in lockstep. So playing slowly is going to help a lot. To be very, very clear that you're actually playing. This was one case where I was really having trouble. This was fine. This started getting a bit off because this shape, using these fingers, 4, 3, 2, when the 2 was on a black key and the others were on white keys, was giving me some trouble, and it wasn't very clear, very pop 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 pum. And because the right hand was very pop 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 pum, the slight variation in the left hand meant that I wasn't in lockstep. So practice very slowly. Make sure that you are in lockstep. Both hands are in lockstep as they're playing different rhythmic shapes, each one with a life of its own. I think that's it. Is that it? Was that everything? These are getting quicker and quicker. Okay, one last tip, just a very minor tip. If you're ever feeling a bit lost about the tempo, sometimes that happens to me with pieces. This is true for all of all pieces, almost every piece, but for some reason it was more important here. Lock into one part where you're very sure. So for example, for me, the part that I was very sure of tempo-wise was at the end of the middle, the first modulation, the first resolution. I locked into that feeling, boom, 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 and that gave me the pulse. Doom, doom, doo, 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 doom. And now I can start. Very useful tip for all the preludes, this one included. Okay, that's it. Let's play the piece. I actually already played the piece. I'm going to splice it in after this, but let's pretend I'm playing it right after this, right? Boom,